In the last 3 videos we've had over doing Angular with Django, we started with setting up Angular. We moved on to displaying data with Angular to our templates, and we have done some basic interaction with the backend using jQuery's AJAX ability. You can see that by looking in our browser. You see we have our original click, we have our list of users, and then we have our form that when you submit a name just returns back the message, "Thank you for your information." In this video, we're going to combine the list of names and the form that we have and use ngResource, which is an Angular way of getting information from the back end. I've already gone ahead and set up a view on the back end and a URL for us to route to on the back end. I'm not going to show those, but it is generally an accepted practice in the Django world to use Django REST framework to power your back end of your Angular code. So with that, we're going to focus on our template and our Angular code itself. So if we look at our template, the first thing we've done, we've gone ahead and added our angularresource.js file so it can include it properly. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually start combining some of our code together. We're going to copy our form that we created earlier and paste it below. And then we're going to rename the add name controller to name2 controller. We're going to remove the messages div from below. Going to create a new div, and then we're going to go ahead and copy the unordered list that we used earlier down into our new controller in that div so we can actually display the information that we're using on the server. We're going to rename the user to name in all of our cases. That's really all we need to do in this section to be able to save it off into the back end. Let's go ahead and look at our Angular code. It's fairly basic, but it's a little bit involved. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add ngResource to our module definition, so that way Angular knows to actually bring it in for us to actually use. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new factory called name. We're just going to use our resource. The full functionality of what ngResource factory does is beyond the scope of this video. I highly recommend you check out the documentation as it can go into a lot better explanation than I can. But what we're doing is we're naming it name, we're using the resource, and we're setting the URL to be API/names, which we've mapped to in our URLs file. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do our csrf token stuff, and that's just simply setting a configuration for our HTTP provider. It's similar to working how our jQuery stuff works, where it just automatically grabs it and sends it. It's just this is how you do it in Angular. Then the final step of our JavaScript code is our actual controller. If we look at it, we have name2 controller, and we're passing in scope and name, so we can still have our scope that we normally use, and then we have our name factory that we've declared above. On the scope, we're setting 2 things. We're setting names, and we're just doing a name.query, which is going to call our backend code and get our list of names. And then we have the save, which we're setting to a function, just like we did before, where it passes in a object with it. The only difference here is we have var new name, so we're creating a new name variable, and then we're instantiating a new name object, and we're passing in the information from our front end. So now that we have our new name object created, we're going to go ahead and call the save function on it. We're going to use the promise of then to pass in a function. So that what we're going to do is once the result comes back, we're going to do a scope.names and push the result onto that names list that we created earlier. From there, Angular is going to run its process and go through its loop and display it on the screen for us like we would expect. So with that all said and done and that kind of explanation out of the way, let's go ahead and look at it in our browser and see it actually working. If we refresh the page, we see that we have another section at the very bottom with a list of names. If we'll add a name of Jill last and we submit the name, it adds to it. Can add another name of Jake and John and submit that as well. So you can see it's actually working and it's calling in the back end. And that's it. That's all there is to using the ngResource to be able to use a RESTful API backend with Angular.js and really slim up that code so you don't have a whole bunch of AJAX. But over the course of the last 4 videos, we've shown you how to set up a basic Angular site. We've shown you how to display information in different ways. We've also shown you 2 different ways to do AJAX calls to your backend to be able to display data. With that, I hope it's been a good introduction to dealing with Angular and Django, and I hope you'll explore and learn how to do everything and really make some fun, interesting apps with it. Thank you and have a great day.